Friends, we gather together this morning to celebrate the life and to honor the memory of Bill Mack. Bill's family so very much appreciates your presence here with us this morning. Your presence offers them a great deal of comfort and support.
Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, Minot yarbitzeni al me menuchot yanachaleni, Nafshi yishovev, Yanacheni v'magle tzedek l'ma'an shemo, Gam kirelech begitz al mavet, Lo irara ki ata imadi, Shiftecha umishantecha hema yanachamoni, Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged tzurirai. Dishanta v'shamen roshi kosi revaya, Ach tov v'chesed yudifuni kol yemei chayai, V'shaviti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim.
Adonai ma'adam v'teda'ehu ben enosh v'chashvehu. O Lord, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you are mindful of us? We are like a breath. Our days are as a passing shadow. We come and we go like grass, which in the morning shoots up renewed, in the evening it fades and it withers. You cause us to turn to dust, saying, Return, you mortal creatures. Would that we were wise, that we understood whither we are going. For when we die, we carry nothing away. Our glory does not accompany us. Mark the wholehearted and behold the upright. They shall have peace. The author of the Bible's 150 Psalms begins the collection with what is clearly an introductory passage, poem, in order to try to define to some degree what are the elements of a well-lived, a happy life. And you will see that the author characterizes this in a variety of wonderful ways, including a very powerful metaphor. Happy are those who have not followed the counsel of the wicked, nor taken the path of sinners, nor joined the company of the insolent. Rather, the teaching of God is their delight, and they study that teaching day and night. They are like a tree planted beside streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, whose foliage never fades, and whose fruit always flourishes. Let us join together now in the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Kohelet, the author of the biblical book of Ecclesiastes, reminds us that for everything there is a season. a time for every experience under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. As many of you may know, the Bible's Psalm 90 indicates both the normal lifespan and its outer limit in the following line. The days of the years of our lives are 80 years and 10, or reason by strength 80 years. Bill Mack exceeded that outer limit by almost 20 years, having reached his 99th birthday this past July 5th. And these additional years were not defined by an increasingly precipitous decline, for Bill was able to live a healthy, independent life at the Wiggins place until he moved over to Montefiore a mere 11 days before he died. And both moves, the first to Wiggins and then to Montefiore, were Bill's free will choices, emblematic of his ability to make his own decisions and his keen desire not to be a burden to his children. Born in Cleveland to his parents, Ben and Lillian, Bill graduated from Lakewood High School and attended the Ohio State University for 1 quarter before being drafted into the Army. After serving his term, he returned to OSU and received a degree in marketing. He thereupon worked in sales for several companies before striking out on his own with Bill Mack Specialties. When I met with Bill's family the day before yesterday and asked them what made Bill the successful salesman he was, they came forth with several of Bill's personal attributes that struck me as characterizing not only the salesman, but also Bill Mack, the person, more broadly. Bill, his family said, was loving and sweet. He was a sweet individual, wasn't he? And that he was very social, possessing, as he did, a natural ability to interact easefully with other people. And he had what his family called a gift of the gab. Moreover, Bill had a fine sense of humor. He never took himself seriously, and he was a caring, loving, and devoted husband, father, grandfather, and friend. In addition, Bill, I was told, was a person of moderate tastes, and rarely, if ever, did he do anything in excess. In a word, Bill enjoyed the pleasures of simple living. And in retrospect, no one should be surprised that Bill lived as long and as well as he did, because throughout his life, he was never sick, he had almost no surgeries, and he kept his sharp memory to the very end. As an example of this uninterrupted mental acuity, Bill maintained control, complete control, of the schedule of his pills. He arranged the daily doses on his own, and he could tell you, even in his 100th year, just what each of the pills was for. Bill loved nothing more than spending time with his wonderful family, enjoying every Shabbat dinner at Howard's and Janet's home along with Larry, and before they went off to college with his beloved grandchildren, and how he enjoyed regaling David and Lori with stories from his past, especially stories about his experiences in the Army. Now, not only did Bill Mack live a blessed life, he well knew how blessed he was. And he was always appreciative, and he said so whenever anyone did anything for him. "Thanks for coming," he would say to anyone who visited him. And often, "What would I do without you?" I myself came to know Bill Mack quite well over the years. And I want to share two memories of him that I will cherish as long as I live. The first relates to something he said many, many years ago in one of our Shabbat morning Torah study sessions. We must have been discussing at that moment the early books of the Bible when someone in the room made the following comment. "Now, how am I supposed to believe that God split the Red Sea so that the Israelites could go forth on dry ground?" This, of course, is a common and wholly understandable question that we moderns ask about the Bible. Up shot Bill Mack's hand. And here's what he said. "Now, if I'm asked to believe that God created the world in 6 days and sent the flood that destroyed the entire world in the time of Noah and delivered 10 plagues to the Egyptians, why is it a problem to be asked to believe in the miracle of the splitting of the Red Sea?" A wonderful, logical inference by Bill, wouldn't you agree? And from that moment on, whenever the miracles of the Bible were questioned, I immediately pulled out what I came to call the Bill Mack corollary. Of course, we're not required to believe in these miracles ourselves, but if we're going to reckon with biblical realism, then we have to take them seriously, or we're not really reading the Bible, just our own biases. And this, I believe, was Bill Mack's point. My second memory is one that grew in intensity over a period of 5 years. Now, many of you may remember that Bill's beloved wife, Rita, lived at the Montefiore Home for the Aged for at least 5 years, during which time her mental capacity continued to decline. Now, Rita was blessed with a loving and loyal family, a family that visited her at Montefiore on a regular basis. But Bill was there for several hours every single day for all those 5 years, eating with Rita, sometimes feeding her, patiently sitting with her and talking with her, even when it became impossible for her to engage in conversation. I always marveled at Bill's love for and his devotion to Rita. And then one day after lunch, Bill and Rita were sitting together in her room, sitting in chairs so that the two of them were facing one another. And suddenly, without warning, and in the quiet of that moment, Rita smiled at Bill, and then she died. I've always thought of that smile as an expression, though she was at that point deep into dementia, that smile was an expression of Rita's profound love for and appreciation of Bill, and for all the attention and love he doted on her all those years. A love that lay too deep for words. Bill is survived by his sons, Howard and Larry, and his daughter-in-law, Janet, by his grandchildren, Spencer, Lori, and David, by Lori's fiance, Dan, and Dave's significant other, Liz. Bill is also survived by many loving nieces, nephews, and cousins. He was predeceased by his parents, Ben and Lillian, by his beloved wife of 65 years, Rita, and by his sister, Shirley, and his brother-in-law, Joseph. Bill Mack lived an extraordinarily long life, and he lived it in good health and in the continual presence of those he loved. Bill Mack was one blessed individual, and those family and friends who knew him and loved him were also blessed by his presence. Zichrono livracha, the memory of Bill Mack, will always be our blessing. Amen. I want to now call on Bill's grandchildren, David and Lori, who will reflect upon the life, the qualities, the accomplishments of their grandfather.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for coming to celebrate the wonderful life of our grandpa. You might all know me for being my grandpa's favorite granddaughter, and I'm not just saying that because I was the only one. My grandpa and I had a very special bond. Here are a few things I remember the most about my grandpa. He was loving. Whenever I needed a hug or a kiss, he was always there for me. He loved me like no other. Twice a week, even up until 5 days ago, we would talk. It went something like this. Hello, who is this? 2 minutes of trying to figure out who it was because he could not hear. Then he realized it was me. We proceeded to talk about the weather, my job, and how I was for 3 minutes. I would then ask him how he was, and his response was always the same. Fabulous. Grandpa was not afraid to tell the truth. My first week of college, he told me not to eat too many sweets at the cafeteria. I assured him I wasn't. He was very happy about that. Grandpa has been a simple man since I met him back in 1999. He loved solitaire, McDonald's, friends, and family. The combination of those 4 things, I believe, led him to 99 years. The last 2 years, Grandpa would say to me, Lori, how the hell am I almost 100? His humor never failed to make me chuckle. Even though he is not here with me physically anymore, I know for a fact that he will always be in my heart. Grandpa, I love you, and I can't wait for you to hug Grandma again.
They don't make microphones big enough for me. Good morning. Thank you all for joining us as we celebrate the life of my beloved Grandpa Bill. I wish to share a few memories with you prior to laying him to rest beside my grandma. This is truly a celebration of a long and happy life. Grandpa Bill was always amazed at how old he was and regularly made remarks to the tune of, I never knew anyone who was 99 damn years old. Can you believe it? If you knew my grandpa, he was a charming, caring, and loving husband, father, and grandfather. He was such a light in our lives and made every effort to know what was going on while we were growing up and now as we build our adult lives. The one thing that will stick with me forever is how quickly he welcomed Liz and Dan into the family and asked how they were doing every time we spoke. Some of the things we loved to do with him when we were growing up was eating Klondike bars, and he let us lick the plate, which we were not allowed to do at home, and carving pumpkins on Halloween on the dining room table. In our teenage years, we traveled to Florida with Grandpa and Uncle Larry and had wonderful conversations by the pool and made regular adventures to look at the beach. He told us stories of growing up during the Depression, his time in the Army, and all the adventures he took with his Grandma Rita across the globe. As already mentioned, he remembered our faces and names until the very last day. I hope I have a memory like his and never forget the great man that he was. May his memory be a blessing.
And now Bill's son, Howard.
A few years ago, Janet and I went to hear a speaker, and he said the most important people in society are caregivers. And we truly want to thank the people at Wiggins and Montefiore who took such good care of him and were so kind to us and kind to him for the last several years. It really meant a lot to us. About 8 years ago, I told my dad he couldn't drive anymore. But I said, wherever you want to go, I will take you. And he took me up on that. Initially, he went to McDonald's. You'll hear that a lot. And he met a group of guys who he just found there. It was about 10 or 12 guys who went twice a week, and they talked about politics. They talked about sports and everyday life. And he loved that. Unfortunately, when COVID came, that ended. But what didn't end is my dad loved to go out to lunch. And if you were near him and it was lunchtime, he would ask you if it was Spencer, if it was Lori, if it was David, if it was Janet, even Rabbi Klein. He liked to go to lunch, and I'm sure with many of you, and his favorite thing to eat was hamburgers. I estimate my father had about 10,000 hamburgers in his life. When he moved to Wiggins, he loved Wiggins, but he also loved to get out. So every Monday, our dear friend Lori Silver and his dear friend would take him to McDonald's for breakfast, and they'd go to the drive-thru, and he always got a sausage egg McMuffin, a coffee with 1 cream, and a glass of water. On Wednesday nights, he would go out, my brother would pick him up, and would go to my cousin Pam's house, and they would bring in food. It might be Bob Evans, it might be Burntwood Cafe, or Winking Lizard. He loved their wings, was his favorite. Thursday morning, it was back to me, and I took him to McDonald's again, and we had the same meal as he had with Lori. Now, a few times I said, Dad, we're going to try something different. So we went to Chick-fil-A, or we went to Burger King or Wendy's, and I'd say, Dad, how was it? It was okay. So it became McDonald's for the rest of the time. On Fridays, as already mentioned, we used to go to my parents for Shabbos dinner, but about 20 years ago, we started going to our house. We'd either go to services first, or we would look at that on the live stream. And whatever I made, my dad would eat everything. And again, yes, he was a great guest, and he always said it was good. Saturday morning, Larry would pick him up, and they would go to Panera. And Dad always got a bear claw. He loved a bear claw. And he got 3 or 4 margarines, and he got his cup of coffee, and he would eat in Larry's car. And Larry had his nice Tesla, and it didn't thrill him. But he did. And the one good thing about going to Panera was he could get a refill on the coffee. So before they left, Larry would run in, get him a refill. And finally, on Sundays, Wiggins had a really good machine that made hot chocolate. And 3 o'clock, I would come, and we would drink our hot chocolate together and talk about the week proceeding and what was coming up. It felt really good to see how much Dad enjoyed these outings. And I learned a lot. I learned that what's important is family, friends, and the small things in life.
There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light. Long, long after the star itself is gone, And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember, as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. יש כוכבים שאורם מגיע ארצה, רק כאשר הם עצמם עבדו ואינם. יש אנשים שזיו זכרם מאיר, כאשר הם עצמם אינם עוד בתוכנו. אורות אלה המבהיקים בחשכת הליל, הם שמרים לאדם את הדרך, as we live our days. These are the ways we remember.
O God of life, amid the ceaseless tides of change which sweep away the generations, your love remains to comfort us and to give us hope. Around us are life and death, decay and renewal, the flowing rhythm that all things obey. Our life is a song to a dance that we cannot hear. Its melody courses through us for a little while, then it seems to cease. Whence the melody, and whither does it go? In darkness as in light, we turn to you, the source of life and the answer to all of life's mysteries. As you are able, I invite you now to rise for the El Mole Rachamim.
El Mole Rachamim, שוכן במרמים, חמסי מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, במלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים. את נשמת וולף בן בנימין וליבה, שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן תחי מנוחתו. הנאה באה הרחמים אז תראהו, בסתר כנפיך לעולמים. ותצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו, אדוני הוא נחלתו וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר אמן.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to William Bill Mack, our loved one who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings. Let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And let us say together, Amen. You may be seated. I want to announce that the family of Bill Mack will receive friends at the residence of Howard and Janet Mack at 23670 Duffield Road in Shaker Heights. They will receive friends today following interment and until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, tonight from 7 to 9, and on both Wednesday and Thursday from 2 to 4 in the afternoon and 7 to 9 in the evening. Once again, on behalf of the family, we're most grateful to you for your presence here. There is nothing more comforting in our difficult times of our lives than the presence of friends, of loving people who put their arms around the mourners, either literally or figuratively, by your presence. Thank you for being here. Our service will continue now at graveside at Mayfield Cemetery.
holds the hearse. I'm going to place the casket on top of those.
Put on your headlights and your flashers. You step directly to your car.
Turn to your cars if you like. Your gloves.
We met at Larry's downtown party for the first time. We met together.
I'm a retired key employee.
That's right. You're retired.
Frank and I actually worked together.
Well, unfortunately, it's still there.
And we shared many complaints about you while we were sitting there.
About the
I would join you. I don't know how this big
We get together.
Yeah, absolutely, Frank.
3 ATMs I used to try to use over the weekend got rejected.